Part 94. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 933. What should you pay attention to? Did the Lord Shen want to kill someone because his evil intentions were exposed? Then I would like to ask the Lord, how will you explain to the King of God after killing me? Could it be that the Lord of God thinks that you can escape with your words and deeds at this time? Have you ever seen the God King? Zhang Zizai said. Of course he knew that compared to this tens of thousands of years old monster, he was indeed too young. All his life experiences were just a moment in the life of this god, but he had never been afraid of him. Maybe he can't take revenge now, but that doesn't mean that Zhang Zizai will forget, just like he has never finished what Xuanhuan Chushan did. Did the God King move out again? Xingxia God Lord was no longer patient. He was now in trouble and was in great trouble. The top priority must be not to let Zhang Zizai leave. In his emergency, the only way he could think of was, it seems I can only erase your memory and throw you out. Just pretend that you have never been to this place. It is indeed easy for a divine king, and this can solve this problem. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. This method can be very cruel. After Zhang Zizi heard this, he understood even more that these people were crazy. Unfortunately, he had already prepared for it. Facing the threat from the Lord Xingxiu, he just smiled coldly and said, it means that the Lord admitted that she had never stolen any star spring water at all. All are framed by the Lord God and the Star Lord, and you are setting up such a situation here. What conspiracy is there against her? So what? She is just one of our experimental subjects. Her existence is to benefit another person and combine their talents into one. But, what's the use of knowing so much? You can't get it right away. Forget. Haha. Xingxiu Shenjun was not afraid at all. Although Zhang Zizai's intrusion was beyond expectations, it was really not that difficult to erase his memory. Just as he was thinking this, Zhang Zizai smiled and took out an image talisman and said, so what if you forget? This image talisman records clearly, everything about you is now ironclad evidence. A few days ago the Lord of Evernight Star is still quibbling in front of me, claiming that he is fair and strict, but unexpectedly, he secretly framed a person who has not yet become a god. It is so despicable and shameless, it is simply amazing. Xingxia God Lord was so angry that he laughed. He added 3 good words in a row, and then said, you are indeed too young. What's the use of being cunning? If you show it now, can this thing be preserved? He was really a little scared. If he directly erased his memory and threw the person out, but the other party recorded it, he only had to read it once and he would remember everything. Thinking of this, he felt that he could never give him any more space to deal with a cunning person like Zhang Zizai. But before he made a move, a sound that made him shiver sounded on Zhang Zizai's body. Of course it can be saved, because I heard it all. The voice was gentle and low. When the voice sounded, a man wearing a white robe and long platinum hair walked out of the crystal pendant on Zhang Zizai's chest. It was just a shadow. Not an entity, but at this time it almost condensed into an entity, as if Nadu God King was standing in front of Zhang Zizai. This is the crystal necklace given to Zhang Zizai by the King of the Gods. After the appearance of the God of Stars, the King of the Gods directly talked to Zhang Zizai and asked Zhang Zizai to lure him out of the key words. Now it is almost done. The King of the Gods just showed up here. The clone of the soul. King Du Shen is actually hiding next to him. Xingxiu Shenjun's mind was completely blown. He was a little numb now, especially after seeing King Du Shen's eyes that looked like a smile but not a smile. Xingxiu, I'm getting older and my brain is no longer bright. A child is playing tricks on you. Du Xuanhuan's spiritual clone laughed. Zhang Zizai estimated that this should be the clone of the soul of the King of Gods. He didn't know how it was split. It was hidden in the crystal necklace he gave him. Dushan King, don't listen to him. Xingxiu Shenjun was completely worried. He knew that he was definitely in trouble. Such a simple thing had been messed up by him. No need to quibble. I'm not a fool. I know things well, so why bother talking about it? King Du Shen shook his head and said, let's go out and see you again. His palms emitted white light, forming a huge cloud that surrounded Zhang Zizai, Ling Xian, and the moon-eating demonic wolf, and then took off. Stay, Xingxiu Divine Lord was very anxious, but just when he was about to move someone to stay, he met the eyes of Dushan King and could only shrink back quickly, his face already ugly. The moment he hesitated, King Du Shen, Zhang Zizai, and the others had disappeared. Originally, Zhang Zizai didn't know how to leave after finding someone, but King Du Shen had a delicate mind and had already prepared it for him. He took Zhang Zizai and the others and easily shuttled through the already unstable galaxy fantasy formation. After coming out, he directly found Lu Dingxing and Xuanhuan, who had been waiting outside for a long time. The two of them may have been scarred, but they probably didn't have any roots. The Blackwater nine-headed black snake has disappeared. Meet the capital god King, Xuanhuan said quickly. He had already seen Ling Xian, and was about to ask what the situation was when King Dushan said directly, let's go out. He began to draw on the ground. In his flying handwriting, a totem array quickly took shape. In a short time, the totem array shone with light. The king of the gods asked everyone to stand up, including Moon Eater. Demon Wolf. The moon-eating demonic wolf must have known that it was leaving here. Zhang Zizai had indeed fulfilled his promise. If so, it might not even need the beast control talisman. It would be dead set on following Zhang Zizai. Let's go. At that moment, the light shone, and the rich white light completely enveloped them. In the light, Ling Xian pressed a little harder and held Zhang Zizai's arm. She didn't dare to make any big movements. It seemed that one arm could be her life-saving straw. If it were Suyuexi, it would definitely be on him at this time. Zhang Zizai grabbed her hand and reassured her. In fact, she is like a beast, hiding and living her own life, but there are always people who make her uncomfortable. Zhang Zizai just wants to let her never encounter such a thing again in the future. Of course, every account this time must be settled clearly. When they escaped from the Star Prison, Zhang Zizai saw the Star Lord chasing after him, but unfortunately, how could he catch up with the Lord God King? He must be very depressed. Letting Zhang Zizai break into the altar was a major mistake in the first place. What is even more unspeakable is that he also let Zhang Zizai trick him into saying something, and it was recorded by the image talisman. It was a great shame and humiliation. But so what, when the light flashed, Zhang Zizai and the others had disappeared. The Lord of Stars could only roar and roar, while the Blackwater nine-headed black snake in the distance shivered. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 934. Beyond the Sea of Stars in the Eternal Night. The white totem array appeared out of thin air, then rotated and shone, and then the totem lines on it were twisted and entangled, unpredictable. Outside the totem array, people watched nervously, especially one of them, Shen Xiao, who almost shed tears. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. At this time, figures appeared in the totem array one by one, and one of them, a silver demon wolf, was particularly eye-catching. It was definitely a very beautiful beast, elegant and pure, like the bright moonlight. But Shen Xiao's eyes only noticed one of the weak women. She turned into a ray of light and rushed in, hugging Ling Xian. The two hugged tightly. This scene was actually very touching. In fact, they were not without conflicts from childhood to adulthood, and they even experienced life and death decisions in Zhelanjiayuan. But so many experiences have made them understand who their true relatives are. Zhang Zizai smiled. It took a lot of effort for the sisters to meet each other. They haven't come back yet, but the King of Gods has already given a detailed account of Zhang Zizai's encounter. Now everyone knows that the Lord of Yanjai Star is really not a good person. Fuer, let's get down to business first, Zhang Zizai said. Yes, Shen Xiao then gently let go, but still held her hand, with a look of distress on his face. Holy Master, help me see what those beasts are doing to my sister. Without her, the Holy Emperor had been observing her for a while. He squinted his eyes and said, did this girl have a very powerful bloodline inheritance power before? This is definitely not an ordinary bloodline. Yes, Shen Xiao nodded. Are you her biological sister? The Holy Emperor asked, meaning, why don't you have Sakura? No, she is my uncle's daughter, Shen Xiao said. Of course, it didn't matter. The Holy Emperor looked at it again, communicated with the King of the Gods, and said, if my guess is correct, the Lord of Yanjai Star should have used the magic power of the ancient demon lineage that has long since disappeared. Xiangong, combined with the matching totem array, extracts the power of her bloodline and transfers it to another person. Of course, this other person needs to be able to withstand this kind of bloodline from another person, and he himself needs to have special abilities. I also think it's the pulse Guiyi Xiangong, King Dushan said. This method is similar to that of Xingxia Shenjun. It's a pity that this magic skill has been lost a long time ago. I don't know how they knew it. Now, at least 80% of her bloodline power has been deprived of. The remaining 20% is so weak and incomplete that it will be difficult to become a god in the future. If you don't become a god, you can only live less than a few hundred years. Beast. Damn it. This old witch, Shen Xiao was already furious. At this time, his fists were clenched, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. It is indeed a disgraceful method. In fact, she is already a talent of Yanjai Xingai, so why bother with this? Without depriving her of her bloodline, she herself can become the pillar of Yanjai Xingai. King Du Shen shook his head and said. The Holy Emperor narrowed his eyes and said, I know who inherited it. It should be Ji Yingying. She was not an ancient god at the God King's feast. She was already an ancient god when I saw her a few days ago, and she has this child's body, breath, and her ancient black hole totem has the ability to devour and fuse. If she had not inherited her bloodline, she would not have become a god so quickly. His guess was similar to Zhang Zizai's. Seeing Ji Yingying again, Zhang Zizai also felt that something was wrong. Unexpectedly, it was really her. This seemingly cute and lively girl looks really brainless, but is she such a devil in her heart? Sure enough, you know people and faces, but you don't know the heart. I thought she was as cute as Chi Yuan, but who knew she could even do such a thing? If you think about it carefully, I really can't figure it out. They are clearly two talents. Why should they be merged into one? Did a donkey kick their brains? The Holy Emperor couldn't help but complain. It turns out that Ji Yingying is not much better than this child, and this child may even have greater potential in the future. I can't figure it out either, King Du Shen said coldly. She must die, Shen Xiao gritted her teeth. Of course she remembered Ji Yingying. She had a bad premonition at the beginning, but she didn't expect that she was really a bitch. Holy Master, is there any way to restore my sister to her original state and get her things back? She asked anxiously. It's unlikely. Based on my understanding of that technique, it can't be reversed. But I know that they should really want to take away the remaining 20%. If it is already incomplete, what will happen to Ji Yingying's? The effect won't be too great, the Holy Emperor said sympathetically. He looked at Lingxian and said, from now on, you can follow my sister. She can take good care of you. Let Zhang Zizai handle the matter of revenge. Such deep hatred is indeed unbearable. No, there must be. After hearing this answer, Shen Xiao collapsed. Zhang Zizai actually had a point, he couldn't accept that Lingxian would have to be like this in the future. At this moment, a guy who had been silent spoke up and said, "Boss, maybe I can." The person who spoke was none other than Lu Dingxing. Zhang Zizai immediately pulled him out and said, "I have the demon tomb inheritance, and I have this inheritance. I also know the method of reversal. This method is a secret. Not many people know it. The Polski Xiangong itself is a demonic skill of the ancient demon lineage, and Lu Dingxing is the orthodox descendant of the ancient demon tomb. He knows that this method is very normal." "Are you sure?" Zhang Zizai asked seriously. "Put them together, the other party has no power to resist, and let them be manipulated. I can do it. This reversal method is created by the creator to avoid abuse. It is a punishment that will cause great harm to the enemy. If Lu Dingxing tried very hard, it would be really difficult for her." It was so difficult to say it in a hurry. What he meant was that as long as the two people were put together, and Ji Yingying could not resist, he would be able to reverse the meridians and return the bloodline inheritance to Lingxuan's body. After all, it belonged to him, and it could also cause great harm to Ji Yingying. How huge this huge is, it is not clear. After everyone heard it, Du Shenwang said, "Young man, do whatever you want, but you must be smart enough. How to find such an opportunity depends on you. If there is such a way, you must take it back immediately, and you must not delay. If your bloodline is too long, then you can't spare it, right?" "Yes," Lu Dingxing nodded. "Then go to the Eternal Night Sea directly." Zhang Zizai made a decision. "Do you have a plan?" asked the King of Gods. He knew that in the face of such an important matter, Zhang Zizai must have a careful plan. Today is tentatively scheduled for 3 chapters. I wrote a little late at night and still owe 5 chapters. I have been under a little pressure to write recently because I am a little tired, but I will pay back what I owe. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 935. There is no such thing as a perfect certainty in this world. After all, the other party is not a vegetarian. Zhang Zizai only knows that he has reasons not to retreat, and now there is no one or anything that can stop his will for revenge. Those who do evil will pay the price sooner or later. He doesn't want this world to come too late. They also know that if this thing is to be done, it must be done as soon as possible. And it is likely that most of this will depend on Zhang Zizai himself, because Lingxian is a disciple of Yanjai Xingai after all, and it is definitely not convenient for Du Shenwang and others to do it personally. Their existence can only serve as a deterrent. If it weren't for them, Zhang Zizai would take Lingxian back now, which would be like a sheep entering a tiger's mouth. Whether it is life or death, whether Lingxian still has hope, and whether the person who deprived her of her bloodline will pay the price, it all depends on Zhang Zizai. While heading to the Eternal Night Sea of Stars, the Holy Emperor took out a talisman and gave it to Zhang Zizai, saying, "This is the Escape God Talisman, which is very effective. There are not many in the entire God realm. As long as you control Ji Yingying and use this Escape God Talisman, the Eternal Night Star Lord will not be able to catch up with your escape. You can take the person away. I have set the destination of this Escape God Talisman to a relatively hidden location, and the distance has reached the limit of the Escape God Talisman." "Thank you, Holy Emperor," Zhang Zizai said gratefully. So his only difficulty became controlling Ji Yingying. "This is what I should do as a Holy Master." The Holy Emperor glanced at Shen Xiao and said. After he finished, he took out another Escape God Talisman and gave it to Lu Dingxing, saying, "As long as he succeeds, you can immediately follow and take her with you. There is no problem with the Escape God Talisman taking 2 people away." "Holy Master, is there anything else?" "I want to go too," Shen Xiao said. "No more, it's useless for you to go," Don't waste it, do you think it's cabbage? I can't bear to use it myself, the Holy Emperor said with a stern face. You can't use it either, Shen Xiao said. After all, there is really no one in this god's domain who can let the Holy Emperor use this thing to escape, unless the God King wants to kill him, but how can the God King kill him? Zhang Zizai took the escape talisman and looked at Lu Dingxing. This matter requires the cooperation of their brothers, but the premise is that they still need to control Ji Yingying. Ji Yingying has become an ancient god, and she is completely different from the level at the God King feast. Zhang Zizai can crush her at that time, but she is probably about the same as Suyuexi now. Fighting may not work, so they can only find an opportunity to outsmart. They were originally near the Eternal Night Star Sea, and it would not take long to go to the Eternal Night Star Sea. But the funny thing is that when they just arrived at the gate of the Eternal Night Sea of Stars, a group of top gods headed by the Eternal Night Star Lord came flying in the direction of the Eternal Night Sea of Stars. They were aggressive and clearly came for Zhang Ziyi and them. The Star Lord was also there. In addition, the only young person was Ji Yingying. Unexpectedly, this woman had a fairy-like appearance, a bee waist and a perky buttocks, and a turbulent body. Her heart was like a devil. Zhang Zizai absolutely did not believe that if she herself did not want to, the Eternal Night Star Lord could force her to do so. When he saw Ji Yingying again, she still had a sincere face and a confused look in her eyes, like a good girl who knew nothing. Her eyes were big and round, and she looked like she knew nothing and could be pushed down at will. Zhang Zizai could only sneer in his heart for being so good at pretending. To be honest, he had seen too many lovely and charming women, such as the free-spirited Juxian, Suyuexi, and Shen Xiao. He had seen too few girls like Ji Yingying. The two sides collided here, and Yanjai Xingai must have more people, but in terms of individual status, the God King Palace Yu Shenjun, Zai Shenjun, and others are higher. Yanjai Star Lord and others naturally saw Lingxian beside Zhang Zizai at a glance. When the two sides confronted here, Yanjai Star Lord narrowed his eyes and looked at Du Shenhuan, asking, "Brother Du, what do you mean?" Zhang Zizai voluntarily entered my Xingyu, and Lingxian was a prisoner of my Xingyu. Why did you bring them out? This move is already very inappropriate, right? I want to ask, can I go to your God King Palace and take the prisoners of your God King Palace away directly? Du Shenhuang smiled dumbly and said, "Yes, Star Lord values which prisoner of my God King Palace, take it away directly." The God King Palace did not imprison any key figures at all. Since this woman asked this, he agreed. This made the Eternal Night Star Lord a little angry. She took a deep breath and calmed down. She said, "Brother Du, please stop joking with me. Just treat this as a boring prank. Zhang Zizai is from your Divine King Palace. Although he insulted me, I will give him face and not bother with him because he has Brother Du's protection. However, I must take away the people from the Eternal Night Star Sea." Her eyes were fixed on Lingxian, and then she said to an old man beside her, "Xingziu, go and bring Lingxian back." They were interesting, and they complained first. The reason they did this was obviously because the process of the pulse returning oneness mysterious art was interrupted, and they did not get a complete bloodline, which directly reduced the effect on Ji Yingying by more than half. It has come to this point, and it seems that they are stubborn and unwilling to give up. Zhang Zizai couldn't help it, he sneered, "Star Lord, you are a noble man who forgets things easily. Previously, you, Lingxian, were punished to the star prison for stealing the star spring water. Now, how do you explain everything about the image symbol? Everyone knows it well, so there is no need for me to release her." The mysterious meridian return to oneness skill transferred Lingxuan's blood to Ji Yingying, and for this, he even made up a lie that she stole the star spring water. Such a lowly act is completely inconceivable that this is something that a Star Lord of such status can do. Even at this time, he is still pretending to be stupid. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Star Lord's behavior is shameless enough to be described as a lowly woman. He even showed the mysterious meridian return to oneness skill, so it was even more meaningless to pretend to be stupid at this time. Obviously, everyone knew the specific details. The group of people in Yanjai Xingai really knew the truth, otherwise they would not be qualified to follow him out. Xingxiu Shenjun must have known all the troubles he had caused. At this time, he could only lower his head, obviously being severely scolded. Zhang Zizai's insults once again made the Lord of Eternal Night even more embarrassed. How dare you? The gods over there were furious and started to curse. Zhang Zizai, watch your words, don't think you can really say anything, the Lord of Eternal Night said with a cold look. If the God King hadn't chosen him, if the Holy Emperor and the God King hadn't stood by him, he would have died countless times. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 936. The Star Master dares to do such shameless and despicable things. Are you still afraid of people? I thought you were thick-skinned enough. Didn't you swear a few years ago that Lingxian had indeed stolen the Star Spring water? The Star Master lied so well. Breathtaking. The Lord of Yanjai Star has learned her lesson, and she is too lazy to talk nonsense with Zhang Zizai. Instead, she says to the God King and the Holy Emperor, "You two, I want to bring back my disciples from Yanjai Star Sea. Please leave them alone, so as not to get hurt. Being nice is not that important to you two. Please give me some face. I really don't want to be unhappy with you because of this matter. After all, if my disciple of Xingai is kidnapped, it will be harmful to you if it spreads. The reputation is not good either." She no longer told the truth and was about to take the person away. After all, Lingxian had nothing to do with these two people. If they kept the person by force and hurt their tens of thousands of years of harmony, it seemed unnecessary. Star Master, there is really nothing we can do about it. The God King asked me to protect Zhang Zizai. King Du God shook his head helplessly. He simply pushed the matter onto the God King, which made it more legitimate for him to support Zhang Zizai. Zhang Zizai suddenly sneered and said, "Star Master, do you still know that things will spread? To be honest with you, I have already returned to the God King's palace regarding the content of this image talisman and the truth of the matter. If you don't give me an explanation now, your sinister behavior and shameless behavior will spread throughout the God realm within a short period of time. Then you will see what will happen to outsiders." Xiaorao's eyes were sharp and he could tell who was right and who was wrong at a glance. The majestic Lord of Evernight Star has done such a chilling thing. How can outsiders dare to join Evernight Star Sea again? The legendary Holy Land actually transferred the gift of one disciple to another disciple, and the disciple who received the benefit was a direct descendant of the Divine Lord. Who wouldn't be worried about this? This is an absolute scandal. By letting Zhang Zizai do this, the Lord of Yanjai Star knew that after they left and returned, not only did they not want to return the Lingxian, they even threatened him and raised an army to hold him accountable. Lord Yanjai Star smiled and said, "Where are you threatening me? What is your purpose?" "Star Lord, you destroyed her and wanted to take her back without even giving me any help. Do you think it's realistic? Don't you know that there is already an undying hatred between me and you, Yanjai Xingai?" Zhang Zizai said word by word. The fact that he was able to talk to the Lord of Yanjai Star calmly at such a young age was enough to show the tenacity of his state of mind. He was so hot that his legs would go weak when he saw the Lord of Yanjai Star. "Brother Zhang, why don't I give you a trick? What do you think?" Ji Yingying suddenly said at this time, with a real smile on her face. Her voice was still sweet, and she looked harmless to humans and animals. "You," Zhang Zizai said. "Aren't you very dissatisfied with us? Then I'll give you a chance to take action. I'm going to fight with you. If you win, you can do whatever you want with me," Ji Yingying said shyly. "Like sleeping with me?" Zhang Zizai sneered. The tone of her words was to make people think of this. As long as you win, of course you can do whatever you want. You are so good, so others won't lose money, Ji Ying said with a rosy face. Oh, then I choose to send you to hell, or cut off your head, right? Zhang Zizai also followed her example, using ambiguous words that made people's hair stand on end. Wow, you are so cruel, how could you do this? Ji Yingying said sadly. When you are cruel, do you also look mean? Zhang Zizai asked back. That's right, shameless bitch. If you lose, you will hand over your life. Do you dare? Shen Xiao said angrily. How could she not be angry if she still said the same thing as Bai Lianhua on this occasion? Why did she suddenly ask Zhang Zizai to fight her? There must be a purpose. For this purpose, she even stuck out her tongue and said, then I can only agree. If I lose, brother Zhang will kill me, as long as you don't feel sorry for me. That's good. What if I lose? Zhang Zizai asked. The other party is using a trick, and he wants to use it, but this will obviously involve huge risks. Sure enough, Ji Yingying smiled and said, if brother Zhang loses, then we can take sister Lingxian back. After all, she is from our Xingai. We can't let her be helpless and fall outside. The fox's tail is exposed. With your ancient god's strength, if you challenge him as a mortal, in the end, you don't want to take my sister back. It's because your magic power has not been fully successful, and you have done evil things. Can you please stop pretending to be innocent here? Trash, Shen Xiao was so angry that she almost exploded. She really didn't expect there to be such a bitch in the world. Of course she wanted Zhang Zizai to kill her directly, but she also knew how difficult the ancient god was to deal with, so she was entangled. She definitely didn't want Zhang Zizai to fall into her trap, but Ji Yingying knew very well how much Zhang Zizai wanted to kill her, so she used this as bait. Yingying is really smart. Zhang Zizai is an arrogant person. He always thinks that he can challenge stronger opponents, but he may have underestimated the gap between ancient gods and mortals, and even underestimated the difference between Yingying and ordinary ancient gods. I bet that for revenge, he will probably fight the Lord of Stars, whispered in the ear of Lord Yanjai. Shut up and let me explain, Yanjai Star-Lord glared at her. In fact, she had instructed Ji Yingying to use this method in order to take advantage of Zhang Zizai's arrogance and blindness. Otherwise, it would be really difficult for them to take Lingxian back. They believed that even if Zhang Zizai knew their purpose, he would challenge them regardless of everything, because he was a person with a spirit of challenge and adventure. The Lord of Yanjai could see more clearly that Zhang Zizai had murderous intentions towards Ji Yingying. This time he came back to ask for the law, which was secondary. He wanted revenge more. Perhaps the only thing she didn't know was that Zhang Zizai had a way to reverse his bloodline. Killing was not the reason for Zhang Zizai to take risks. Controlling Ji Yingying was his reason. Zhang Zizai had thought about it countless times in his heart. Under normal circumstances, he would hardly have the opportunity to control Ji Yingying, as all the other strong men were there. It was impossible for the Du Shenhuang and others to directly help him control her, which would really cross the line. And now, Ji Yingying took the initiative to challenge and set a trap to deal with him, which was his only chance. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 937. But, this undoubtedly has huge risks. That is an opponent comparable to Suyuexi. Suyuexi can crush the second level of the ancient god realm. Even if Zhang Zizai can defeat ordinary ancient gods, facing the current Ji Yingying, his hope is very slim. Maybe he, Lu Dingxing, and Suqianyu will join forces, then there is still some hope. Zhang Zizai has another arrangement, that is, he has first asked the moon-devouring wolf to go to the location where the escape god talisman is about to be transferred. If Ji Yingying can be led there, the moon-devouring wolf can probably subdue her. But the key is that in order to successfully use the escape god talisman to take her away, she must have no power to resist, and the premise is that Zhang Zizai must beat her to the point where she has no power to resist. But all this has become very risky because of the strength comparison between the two. Ji Yingying is clearly saying, "Don't you want to kill me? Don't you want to avenge her? Then come." In fact, she is not very sure that Zhang Zizai will agree. During the feast of the God King, I was not a match for Brother Zhang, so Brother Zhang should be confident enough, right? Remember the domain name of this site, Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. She said with a smile. The God King and the others did not stop Zhang Zizai from making a decision, because they were the only ones left. At this moment, Zhang Zizai could only rely on himself. This was indeed his best chance. People were waiting for Zhang Zizai's response, and all eyes were focused on this young man. What would he do in the face of a talented ancient god? The answer is that he stood up and walked towards Ji Yingying step by step, saying, "In this case, don't expect me to show mercy. I have always killed people without blood." "Oh, I'm so scared." Ji Yingying pretended to be scared and patted her full chest with her hand. Even the Lord of the Eternal Night beside her was not as majestic as her. Fortunately, Zhang Zizai had been nourished by the 9 Immortals for a long time, otherwise he would not have had such knowledge and was attracted by her. Zhang Zizai responded to her with his own weapons. In his left hand was the newly acquired Ghost Dance Demon Sword, and in his right hand was the murderous 33 Killing God Mysterious Weapons. Under the beginning Demon Dragon transformation, Zhang Zizai was covered with black dragon scales and bone spurs, and no skin could be seen on his body. At this time, his pair of Tai Chi Yin-Yang fish eyes gently rotated, appearing even more indifferent. Under the ancient god, his momentum and aura were unprecedented. In fact, others have always overestimated his realm. Until now, he is only the 9th level of the real initial god realm. Even if there is a huge gap between the source power and the ancient god source power, he is confident that he can fight against the real ancient god at this time. In front of Zhang Zizai, seeing him so indifferent, Ji Yingying still smiled lightly, but when she really took action, she would not be vague. This was a battle related to her future. She was definitely more focused than when she fought against Chu Ci. Brother Zhang is so fierce. She is prettier than her. Why do you have to be so fierce for her? Ji Yingying said while she was aggrieved. You are prettier than her? Is there anything wrong with your brain? Look at you, is there any difference between you and a cow in heat? Zhang Zizai said coldly. To be honest, he has never hated a beautiful woman of the same age so much. She is so disgusting that he can curse her out. Until she heard Zhang Zizai's words, Ji Yingying's face finally turned cold. She was as gloomy as water and full of murderous aura. Maybe this is her true face. She didn't want to talk anymore. The slender galaxy whip appeared in her hand. When the black vortex at the center of her eyebrows emerged, a huge black vortex had already formed behind her. The vortex gradually moved to the top of both heads, like a pale white, covering Zhang Zizai, and then at this moment, the black vortex began to rotate. In an instant, Zhang Zizai experienced the power of the god-level totem that could be compared with the infinite time and space in the entire god realm. The ancient black hole totem. A dead black hole, full of the breath of annihilation, completely dead, how miserable, followed by a terrifying swallowing force, acting on Zhang Zizai's body, making it difficult for him to stand firm. He was being pulled by the black vortex all the time, as if he was going to be eaten by this cold black mouth. Death enveloped his whole body at this moment. This black vortex is really too big. To be frank, it is almost 10 times bigger than when she fought against Chu Ci. After becoming a god, she is much stronger than she was then. Zhang Zizai can estimate how much lethality Suyuexi has from her current lethality. Even at the totem level, Her totem is more terrifying. Personal experience makes me know how strong this person is. As long as this black hole exists, I will definitely be controlled by it at all times during the battle. It is difficult to exert much combat power. If I am not careful, I will even be torn into pieces. Be careful, don't turn into pieces, I can't explain to the God King. Ji Yingying laughed strangely. Maybe this is also her first battle after becoming a god. What responded to her was Zhang Zizai's 100 Ghosts Night Parade formation. As long as the Ghost Dance Demon Sword was waved lightly, the 100 Ghosts Night Parade formation would be covered. All kinds of miserable ghosts were rampant everywhere. Ji Yingying's face kept changing. This disgusting scene really affected her. Zhang Zizai was shocked when he broke into the 100 Ghosts Night Parade formation for the first time. A trick, her face was pale, and she had long since stopped being coquettish. After returning to her original appearance, she became more cold. When the black hole totem strongly suppressed Zhang Zizai, she directly threw away the galaxy whip and used the river whip technique. In an instant, under the black hole, silver rivers flew everywhere, almost covering the ground, whipping towards Zhang Zizai. The top totem, the top ancient god source power, and the super god level totem weapon. Now Ji Yingying's only flaw may be that she became a god too recently and has not yet cultivated a god level battle tactic. Even so, when she started to fight, she directly caused a crushing victory. As soon as she made a move, the Holy Emperor and the King of the Gods came to a conclusion. With her current strength, the second level of the ancient god can easily crush, and even the third level of the ancient god can barely fight. If they really fight, 11 may not be her opponent. After all, she not only became a god, but also took away many things from Lingxian. Then Zhang Zizai is in danger, said the King of the Gods. It doesn't matter. Even if we lose, we can just cheat, said the Saint Emperor. I'm afraid they have some tricks up their sleeves and won't give us a chance to cheat, said the King of the Gods. Even they are like this, how can the elders not worry? Especially Shen Xiao, she could only support Lingxian, her eyes full of hope for Zhang Zizai. He can do it. Lingxian was not as nervous as she was, and gently patted her back, as if she was still comforting Shen Xiao. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 938. From the beginning to the end, she was very quiet, allowing Zhang Zizai to fight with peace of mind. This time, Zhang Zizai fought for her. How many such moments are there in life? In the eyes of everyone, the battle broke out fiercely. Ji Yingying's long whip was densely packed, constantly whipping, and at the same time her totem was changing at any time. Sometimes the swallowing power was very strong, sometimes very strong, and sometimes even reverberated and slammed Zhang Zizai directly to the ground. It is precisely because of the constant changes that it becomes more terrifying. There is no way to grasp the rules at all, so Ji Yingying can completely play him around. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow Method G. Situation. The River Vortex Whip method soon hit Zhang Zizai directly. No matter how fast Zhang Zizai's Chaos Thunder God Flash was, he couldn't dodge this time. Because of the black hole totem, his speed was completely affected. Under the influence of the swallowing power of the Tun, he even accidentally crashed into the opponent's attack. Is it fun? Do you know what it means to be a monkey? A waste chosen by the God King, Ji Yingying giggled. She was actually angry, so she not only wanted to crush Zhang Zizai, but also tease him. It's fun, come again. Zhang Zizai climbed up with a sneer on his lips. He did not regard the other party as a weak woman. In his eyes, this was an opponent beyond the limit. Ignorance. Ji Yingying continued to move, and the galaxy whip in her hand changed directly. This time she changed the battle tactics and used a very famous battle tactic in the Eternal Night Star Sea, called Dancing Galaxy. She began to dance with a graceful figure. While dancing, she was like a fairy. The galaxy whip in her hand changed into countless silver lights and shadows. Those silver lights and shadows were dense and more and more. For a moment, it seemed that the entire starry sky was shaken, and countless personalities were shattered in this wild dance. Is it beautiful? Her whole body was jumping under the passionate dance, and it was even more turbulent, creating waves. It's beautiful, not much different from a Sao Zhangzai smiled. Oh! She put away her smile, and the next moment, countless long whips came towards Zhang Zizai, and this time the suppression was more fierce. Zhang Ziban thought he could at least resist, but he soon found that no matter the power of the totem or other aspects, the woman crushed him directly. Even the great chaos immortal sword formation mixed with the infinite sky slash directly crushed the opponent. If it weren't for the demon lord Cauldron protecting himself, he would probably have been a corpse under the dancing galaxy. This battle is really too difficult. This opponent is really annoying. It's really meaningless to knock you down like this. I overestimated you and thought you might be able to fight me. In the end, you are no different from a weak rooster in front of me. What kind of man are you? You still want to stand up for others? Go be a eunuch. Ji Yingying giggled. She has the capital to be arrogant. Anyone can see that the gap between Zhang Zizai and her is too big. Even if a normal first-level ancient god comes, it is estimated that he will be like this in front of her. Completely suppressed. Under this kind of suppression, Zhang Zizai can only be beaten. It is impossible to control her. Zhang Zizai seems to be able to hold on now and maintain the will to fight. In fact, he knows very well that if this continues, there is only one possibility of defeat. But today, he is not here to lose or be humiliated. It has to be a setback. He will fail soon. The passion and anger in his body seem to be suppressed to the point of losing his temper. But is this himself? He looked back at Ling Xian. Her eyes were looking at him quietly, but her calmness could not hide her current weakness. She should not be like this. Look at Ji Yingying again. Is there anyone more despicable than her? Why is she so mean? If she had not deprived Ling Xian of her bloodline, how could she become a god, and how could she crush Zhang Zizai with such a high and mighty attitude? Is this fate? This is not. He never believed it. Along the way, since returning from the battlefield of the God King, Zhang Zizai has been questioning himself, to follow the meaning of cultivation and fighting, to think about Suyuxi's path to becoming a god. His feelings for the ancient gods have become stronger and stronger. Until today, he was full of anger. He came to this seemingly impossible opponent with a heart of revenge, his commitment and sense of responsibility. She laughed at herself heartlessly. Such a waste performance, not a man. She also laughed at Ling Xian, who was not worthy of such bloodline. If she is the fate, then Zhang Zizai has decided that even if he dies, even if he is torn into pieces, he will tear this fate apart. So from the beginning to the end, every time he was suppressed, he stood up directly, as if he could not be killed. The power of his will is indeed moving. This is the extraordinary thing that many people see in Zhang Zizai. Seeing Zhang Zizai's eyes, Ji Yingying smiled and said, "Hey, do you want to take advantage of the battle with me to inspire yourself and give you the opportunity to become a god? Brother Zhang, you are too self-righteous. Do you think that becoming a god is such an easy thing? Do you think I don't need to suffer to become a god? Accepting the blood of others is also a hard thing." Yingying's tears are flowing down in pain. It's really despicable. She has robbed the good fortune and still dares to do this. How uncomfortable is it for Ling Xian, who has been deprived of her bloodline? Just because she doesn't say it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Her words made Zhang Zizai's anger rise to an unprecedented peak again. This gradually became a battle that could not be lost. Maybe she was right. Zhang Zizai was thinking about becoming a god along the way. In fact, he was thinking about it all the time, and it was not at this moment of fighting. She can ridicule and teach as much as she wants, and Zhang Zizai can continue to move towards his own confusion in anger. He now has 10,000 desires to tear apart this confusion. Tear this fate apart. Tear this bitch's face apart again. How could people be so shameless? Zhang Zizai was amazed. But it just so happened that his enthusiasm, his commitment to Lingxian, his responsibility, his Tao, everything about him were pushing him, making his heart move forward and fight like never before. It seems that you won't bow to me unless you suffer the real pain. I really hope that Brother Zhang will kneel down and apologize to me. There is no other way. I can only work harder and let Brother Zhang give me kneel down. She smiled charmingly, and at some point, a blue pagoda appeared in her hand. The stars on the pagoda were shining brightly, as if countless stars were condensed in it. As soon as Zhang Zizai saw it, he knew that this was definitely a very high-level god-level totem weapon. But at this time, the black vortex above turned in the opposite direction, and a suppressive force from above, like 100,000 mountains, pressed on Zhang Zizai's head. And the appearance of this star pagoda is like adding 100,000 mountains. Please bookmark this site to read the latest. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 939. How does it feel to have 200,000 mountains pressing down on your head? Zhang Zizai was already close to falling apart, even the demon lord cauldron had been flattened. He had already been completely suffocated, and could not feel anything in the outside world at all. The world seemed to be closed, and all he could feel was the suppression of himself, the black hole totem, and the star pagoda. Brother Zhang said so many annoying words, it's not too much for him to ask you to kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistakes. Ji Yingying's laughter surrounded him from all directions. Her gentle and playful voice was in sharp contrast to the heavy pressure she was under now. She wanted to completely suppress Zhang Zizai to prove her authority and power, and to prove her talent. Maybe at the God King feast, she watched Zhang Zizai being chosen by the God King, and she had long been dissatisfied in her heart. She was a proud daughter, how could she be willing to be unknown at a God King feast? Kneel down, maybe after you kneel down, you will become a god. Aren't you expecting me to create pressure for you to become a god? Ji Yingying said with a smile. In fact, her words were even more vicious. Even if Zhang Zizai wanted to break through the limit, she kept talking about this aspect, which would affect Zhang Zizai's state of mind. If you keep mentioning it, it will be a demon in your heart. The more she brought it up, the less hope Zhang Zizai had. For her who had just become a god, she knew that this would have a huge impact on Zhang Zizai. It could frustrate him and make him fail. To be honest, becoming a god is also quite simple. For example, if you kneel down for me, you may become a god. He. Facing all this, Zhang Zizai's body and mind were indeed under unprecedented pressure. This kind of pressure was more of an inner confusion. Under this heavy pressure, he had many messy ideas about the future path of cultivation. Sometimes he was arrogant and proud, and sometimes he was inferior and fearful. All these confusions actually came from the suppression of the star pagoda. At this time, it can be a desperate situation. But he will not forget that Lingxian is still waiting for him to save her life. Although she doesn't want to, how can she hope that she will become a useless person? Who can hope that the person who took away her bloodline will start a road to success, while she can only be destined to be lonely for a lifetime? Her not wanting doesn't mean she doesn't feel bad. Zhang Zizai doesn't want to make her feel bad in his heart. He just needs to look back at her. When their eyes collide, Zhang Zizai can only experience the endless and crazy fighting spirit in his heart. Ji Yingying's suppression is unprecedented. She is like a giant, oppressing Zhang Zizai into a tiny ant. She even mocked, "Don't you want to become a god? Why don't you try it?" Her eyes can't hide her sarcasm towards Zhang Zizai at all. Sister Lingxian was born to be a worthless person, why should you pity her? Besides, brother Zhang, you are just a waste, what can you do for her? Ji Yingying said with a sweet smile. Her tone always sounded like she was acting like a spoiled child, but her words were the sharpest thorns. Born to be a worthless person. These 4 words were definitely a sword piercing his and Yanner's hearts. She did have bad luck, but could her life be defined in this way? Zhang Ziyi raised his head in despair, and his eyes collided with Ji Yingying's. He had the eyes of a trapped beast, but under oppression, he burst out with terrifying fighting spirit and murderous spirit. Perhaps at this moment, he was more like a beast whose dignity had been ruined. He had forgotten what it meant to become a god, and perhaps he had to thank Ji Yingying. If it weren't for her words, Zhang Zizai would not be so pure, and he might still be thinking about it, but now, he had only one purpose, which was to kill her. Only killing can relieve pressure. Only destruction can prove oneself. Only by letting Ji Yingying fall, will his dignity and Yanner's bloodline come back. This was the most murderous time in his history, which was equal to his anger towards Xuanhuan Chushan. Now, his eyes full of black flames burned on Ji Yingying's body. The pressure of 200,000 mountains was still there, but he bent his body and raised his head. The ground had collapsed at this time, but Zhang Zizai stood up. "Do you feel very accomplished now?" Zhang Zizai's low voice was like a devil crawling out of hell. "It's okay, I'm not proud." Ji Yingying still laughed and ignored Zhang Zizai's resistance. "Then listen carefully, in fact, I am a person who cherishes women, and it is difficult for me to be cruel to beautiful women." Zhang Zizai seemed to be burning all over, not only flames, but also thunder, frost, storms, etc. "Then what?" "But today, I will definitely send you to hell." Zhang Zizai grinned and smiled slightly. So scary. Ji Yingying pretended to be panicked. Zhang Zizai didn't listen to her artificial reaction, he was just telling himself. He said to himself, because, in life, there are some battles that must not be lost. He recalled what Lian Chu said to Suyuexi, and now he thought about it, but it was even stronger. Evil spirits, insidious harmers, kill them. This is the true God. With the true God in your heart, you can stand tall and have no regrets. You walk the holy road and open a magnificent divine road. Protecting morality and doing the right thing, isn't it your divine will? In Zhang Zizai's heart, there is no holy road, or even a magnificent divine road, but he does have his own moral principles. The word guarding is much deeper to him than to Suyuexi, because Suyuexi has too few people to protect, and Zhang everyone is so important to the person he wants to protect. Especially Lingxian, she made Zhang Zizai understand the meaning of protection even more. Since the beginning of his training, he has been fighting for his family, from Dajiang King City to Yanlong ruins, just to save his brother and his father. Then he arrived at the Origin Shen sect, in order to protect the 9 immortals and protect love. In the east of the East China Sea, in order to protect the Origin continent, we use the Wushan talisman to fight bloody battles. He understands the meaning of protection better than anyone else. He has become the source of destruction, but becoming a god is not just the progress and transformation of the source, but the transformation of his Shinto. If Suyuexi became a god, it was for the holy world in her heart, and Zhang Zizai's pattern seems to be a lot. He is just for revenge, just to prevent the people around him from being hurt, just for those who hurt the people he loves, you have to pay a 10,000 times heavier price. He is like this, he seems a little selfish, but it is also like this that he can fight against everything for these reasons, and he does so without hesitation. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 940. This is his morality. He has been exploring this path. Doesn't he value feelings? In fact, he values friendship more. If becoming stronger does not bring dignity and freedom, then the path of cultivation is meaningless. If becoming stronger does not protect the people you love, and you can only watch them suffer and torture, then the path of cultivation, the path of becoming stronger, is even more meaningless. So, I want to become a god in order to control my dignity and freedom. To protect my relatives and friends. I don't have a grand plan. I want very little, but the pursuit of dignity, freedom, and protection is endless. And the meaning of my becoming a god is here. He has never been as firm in his heart and beliefs as he is now. Everything was too chaotic before, and I thought too much, and even paid too much attention to the source of destruction, thinking that I must have mastered more will of destruction, but when everything is pure at this moment, I didn't think so much, but everything became clear. Dignity, seemingly simple, without strength, and being bullied by others, how can there be dignity? Freedom sounds simple, but freedom has limits. Only the strongest people have the greatest freedom. For example, the God King of this God realm can do whatever he wants. No one can restrict him. As for Ling Xian, how can he be free if he can't even protect his bloodline? Guarding is even more unnecessary. When the imperial edict arrived in the great Zhongqing city, Zhang Zizai knew that if he wanted his relatives and friends to be safe, he had to make greater efforts. God, only when he was created for this purpose, is it meaningful. And all this seems to have nothing to do with destruction. But all this is built on the source of destruction. This is the root of the source of destruction, the surging fire of hatred and the firm belief, which transformed into the source of destruction. It is not that the source of destruction has transformed again and become the source of destruction, but that the source of destruction has added the faith and morality in his heart, the lifelong pursuit, the strong desire and the inextinguishable fighting spirit. After the fusion, it has begun to change dramatically, and found the possibility of transformation in the impossible. I want everything on earth to not be able to control me. I want to be able to travel the world and roam in all directions without restraint. I want this eternal universe, the flow of time and space, nothing can control me, no matter it is gods or demons, make way for me. I want the person I love to have dignity and freedom like me. If a bitch hurts my wife and children, my parents, brothers and sisters, or my friends, I will make him pay the price and regret it for the rest of his life. This is what I pursue, this is my path to God. If I can't kill gods and demons, what virtue and ability do I have to master the source of destruction? At this time, his spiritual will has exploded. The endless roar kept shaking, and everything in the world was annihilated in front of him. Only the self-righteous enemy was still laughing, mocking, and humiliating, trampling on the dignity of others. She was still thinking about letting Zhang Zizai kneel down for her. But she never expected that at this moment, the angry young man stood up in the despair she created. Invisibly, he underwent a revolutionary transformation. The same person was completely different. Before this, Zhang Zizai's eyes were only full of anger, but now, there was more of a will as a peerless god in his eyes, which was the thing that could suppress Ji Yingying, and made her suddenly feel a trace of fear in her astonishment. There are always some people who go crazy and suddenly make others feel fear. At this moment, Zhang Zizai gave her the illusion that he was high above. She was too familiar with this process. Not long ago, she had experienced such a process. The source power transformed into the source of God here. The former source power of destruction transformed into the source power of the ancient god of destruction at this time. This is the first step to becoming a god, but it is also crucial. Only by taking the first step can there be a possibility of attracting the divine calamity and allowing the flesh and soul to transform into gods. At the very least, when the source power underwent a huge transformation and became the ancient god source power, at least Zhang Zizai reached an unprecedented peak in terms of power. His current source power of the ancient god of destruction is more than 10 times stronger than before. The source of destruction gave Zhang Zizai extraordinary combat power from the beginning. Even Xuanhuan, who was at the 9th level of the initial god realm, was not Zhang Zizai's opponent before he became a god. He could even directly fight against the ancient god. When he had the ancient god source power of the ancient god and was equal to Ji Yingying in terms of the amount of power, the source power of the ancient god of destruction could suppress all the powers of the same realm, including Ji Yingying's black hole ancient god source power and Xuanhuan's supreme ancient god source power. The feeling that Ji Yingying felt that he was high above was not an illusion, but reality. At this time, Zhang Zizai was like Xuanhuan who had just become a god, and Ji Yingying was like Xuemingzi in front of him. When the two are in the same realm, the real talent duel will reveal the difference. Zhang Zizai was reborn from the ashes, with both hands holding divine totem weapons. Until this time, he truly showed the power of divine totem weapons. Kill her! Kill her! There were thousands of roars in his heart, which gathered at this time to become his killer move in the explosion. He suddenly moved, and when the ghost dance sword in his left hand appeared, under the support of the source power of the ancient god of destruction, the power of the night parade of 100 ghosts was more than 10 times stronger. Hundreds of ghosts entangled Ji Yingying, which made her feel extremely scared. At this moment, Ji Yingying screamed for the first time. He seems to have become a god. The source power seems to have undergone a transformation. Star-Lord. The gods of the eternal night star sea were shocked. In fact, they knew Zhang Zizai's desire, but under Ji Yingying's sarcasm, they had the experience of coming here and knew that the possibility of success was almost zero, and Zhang Zizai was likely to suppress Ji Yingying to the point of complete collapse, and she would become a useless person from then on. Things went according to their imagination. They never expected that the things they joked about would come true. What are you fussing about? The divine tribulation has not been passed yet. What's the use of becoming a god at this time? How can you be Yingying's opponent? The eternal night star lord said coldly. A bet is a bet. There is no way Zhang Zizai could survive the divine tribulation. Even if he could become a god at this time, it would be useless. Besides, Ji Yingying was originally an ancient god, and they had known each other for a while. There was no way she could lose to Zhang Zizai. Under her calmness, the slightly shocked mood of the gods of the eternal night star sea calmed down. This young man is really difficult to deal with. He can become a god even if he disturbs his mind like this. I thought Yingying had already angered him to the point of losing his mind and turning him into a mad dog. How come he suddenly became? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 941. They couldn't figure out what kind of training and transformation Zhang Zizai had gone through in this process. He had to thank Ji Yingying. Without her oppression, he didn't know what dignity was. And now, he disturbed her soul with the totem formation of the ghost dance demon sword. In the next moment, the infinite time-breaking blade came out of the ghost dance demon sword. Just when Ji Yingying was scared and screamed by the ghost, the infinite time-breaking blade hit for the first time. At the moment of hitting, even the star pagoda and the black hole totem on it stopped. This is Zhang Zizai's best chance. The nobility in his eyes is no longer as ferocious as before. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. This is the moment when he will suppress Ji Yingying again. Maybe at this time, he can make Ji Yingying feel fear. After the ghost dance demon sword, the 33 killing gods and mysterious weapons in the right hand really exploded. Now Zhang Zizai can fully control the power of the killing gods and mysterious weapons, allowing this magic weapon to form a 33-fold complete explosion. The great chaos immortal sword formation descended, and when the power of the sky-splitting slash was integrated into it, the endless sword energy tore the space, forming a combination of space fragments and sword energy, and then burst out the lethality of 33 times. Ji Yingying had just endured the power of the broken time blade, and immediately had to face such a killing move. She was angry, because it was embarrassing for her to be counterattacked by Zhang Zizai. At this critical moment, she was calm and indifferent, and quickly took back the star pagoda. At the same time, the black hole totem ran wildly, affecting Zhang Zizai's performance. Break. In Zhang Zizai's mouth, a word that was understated was highlighted. But this word is his will at this moment. Before becoming a god, he was not much worse than Ji Yingying. After becoming a god, at least in terms of ancient god source power, he has formed an absolute crushing. To be frank, many people with the power of the third level of ancient gods may not be able to withstand Zhang Zizai's crushing at this moment. But Ji Yingying's eyes were still contemptuous, knowing that even if Zhang Zizai took this step, he still couldn't destroy her confidence. It was just that when the violent sword energy and the torn space instantly cut the star pagoda away, leaving her completely exposed to Zhang Zizai's sword energy, she felt real fear in the flash of lightning. She frantically swallowed Zhang Zizai with the black hole totem, trying to pull him away, and then fled frantically, but it was too late. The next moment, she was swallowed up by the immortal sword formation. Chi 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 chi. The exposed sword array swept wildly over her body. She resisted in a panic, but was still pierced several times by the killing god's mysterious soldiers of the 33 heavy killings in a short time. The source of destruction of the ancient god rushed into her body, instantly tearing the internal organs and bones in her divine body. Even her body was in a state of severe damage at this time. Ji Yingying spit out a large mouthful of blood, looking at Zhang Zizai with a dull look in her eyes. All this is unbelievable. And all this is real. The terrible pain all over the body is much more painful than accepting other people's blood vessels. Ji Yingying cried miserably. Maybe at this time, she looked like a pitiful girl. Zhang Zizai knew that she looked very pitiful, but he only had a moment of opportunity. Once this moment passed, he would have no chance to achieve his goal, because the reaction time of the Lord of the Eternal Night was basically only a moment. So in an instant, his hands moved almost at the same time, and the ghost dance demon sword and the killing god mystical soldier intertwined dozens of times in the air, almost in an instant. The sword energy and knife aura of the two magic weapons suddenly entangled, and unexpectedly formed a cage, instantly trapping Ji Yingying. Intertwined into this cage, it seems that the two sword energies of the time-breaking blade and the sky-splitting slash, after they were intertwined to form a cage, merged with each other, unexpectedly formed a hole with the two powers of time and space. This hole is definitely the most special prison between the earth and the earth. Its name is called Time and Space Cage. This is the change of the infinite time and space holy dragon totem after Zhang Ziwiyuan transformed into the god source, and it brought him power in his instinct. The awakening of the power of the totem was so sudden, but he could use it instantly. The space-time cage is definitely an enhancement of the sky-splitting slash and the time-breaking blade. It has undergone a transformation during the fusion. When the space-time cage trapped Ji Yingying, her body was instantly unable to move, and even her eyelashes could not move. At every moment, there was a tear in the space within the space-time cage, and her flesh and blood were torn. The space was torn, her flesh and blood were torn apart, and then when the space was restored, her flesh and blood stuck together again, torn again, and healed again. This process was repeated over and over again. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the terrifying power of the space-time cage. It was obvious that Zhang Zizai was basically useless if she was trapped in the space-time cage. In fact, as long as Zhang Zizai wanted, the space-time cage could tear her into pieces in an instant. Ji Yingying looked at him in fear and despair. This was the only thing she could do, because she couldn't even ask for help, so she could only wait to die like this. But of course she believed that she would never die, and the Lord of the Eternal Night was still watching here. How could she die? She was just afraid of Zhang Zizai. Her mind was still blank because she couldn't understand why he suddenly became so noble and so terrifying, just like at this moment. His cold eyes were enough to make people feel numb all over. The terrible pain was unimaginable torture. Ji Yingying almost collapsed at that moment, and her tears flowed down. Unfortunately, the tears just started flowing out, and they could not flow down anymore. Time would freeze every once in a while until the power of the space-time cage completely dissipated. Ji Yingying was in despair and pain, and every moment was unbearable. She could only scream with her soul, asking the Lord of Eternal Night to save her quickly, but at that moment, Zhang Zizai was right in front of her. He looked at her coldly, and then in the next moment, he controlled the space-time cage, and then a magic talisman appeared in his hand. At this time, Ji Yingying already felt that the Lord of Eternal Night had reacted and was coming to save her, but Zhang Zizai suddenly smiled coldly, and then crushed the magic talisman. In an instant, they were surrounded by white light, and they were thousands of miles away in an instant. At the same time, Lu Dingxing and Lingxian also disappeared here. They had been prepared for a long time. When Zhang Zizai succeeded, it would be their time to leave. In this way, even the moon-devouring wolf that had been deployed there would not be used. In an instant, the battlefield suddenly became quiet. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 942. Escape God Talisman. The eyes of the Eternal Night Star Lord suddenly turned red. She roared, stared at the capital God King and the Holy Emperor, and said in a sharp voice, "You gave him the Escape God Talisman. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. She may still not understand why Zhang Zizai could crush Ji Yingying, but for her, what made her even more unbelievable was the Escape God Talisman, because in this way Ji Yingying directly escaped from her control. The capital God King and the Holy Emperor looked at each other, and the capital God King said, "Star Lord, you can't wrongly accuse me of this. I don't have this thing. If I have it, I won't give it to him. This thing is quite valuable." The Holy Emperor also said, "It's even more impossible for me. Anyway, if they don't admit it, no one can do anything. After all, things like divine talismans are rare." The Star Lord of Eternal Night was so angry that she was completely speechless. Her mind was in a mess, and she said directly to the god behind her, "Go after her and find her." She stared at the god King Du and said, "Brother Du, where was Yingying taken? Please come out. I know you must know." The god King Du waved his hand and said, "Star Lord, you really misunderstood me. I really don't know. If you have this time, you might as well find it yourself. After all, no one can figure out how Zhang Zizai defeated Ji Yingying. I can't figure it out either. I am still a little surprised. Star-Lord cares about Yingying so much, why doesn't he accept her as a disciple? After all, if he can transfer the bloodline of another talent in Xingai to her, how can the relationship be very close at this time?" The Holy Emperor expressed his doubts. He did think that the Star-Lord of Eternal Night's concern for Ji Yingying was a bit abnormal. After all, Ji Yingying was just a descendant of the God King of Xingziu. If it was just talent, then it would be even more unnecessary. There are talented people in every generation. For example, Chu Ci of the Saint Emperor sect, he didn't think much of him. After all, he had several disciples, most of whom were not bad. They had the same status, but their attitudes towards talented disciples were completely different. From the somewhat hysterical attitude of the Eternal Night Star Lord at this time, it can be seen that this matter is probably not so normal. Do you think I can't find them? No matter where Zhang Zizai goes, he has to pass the divine tribulation. With his talent, can he hear the movement of the divine tribulation? the eternal night star lord sneered. She had completely fallen out with these two people. At this time, she took her people to start tracking. This is a problem. We can't let her find it. Follow up, the king of the gods said. Zhang Zizai has already done this step, and he must not fail. So while the Lord of Eternal Night and his men were searching, they simply followed behind, behaving very shamelessly. Now both teams were probably replaying Zhang Zizai's outburst and strength in their minds, and the Du Shenhuang and his men could only sigh. The vision of the God King is really not to be underestimated. Dad, did you see that? He is really handsome. Su Yuexi quietly pulled the clothes of the Du Shenhuang. So what? He is not fighting for you, the Du Shenhuang said. Tisk, he has already fought for me once, but you just didn't see it. He, it means that my daughter will be his wife or concubine. You also like such a fickle person, the Du Shenhuang said contemptuously. He is so handsome, he deserves to be hugged by people on both sides. Su Yuexi stuck out her tongue and said coquettishly. On the other side, Shen Xiao was still nervous. She clenched her hands and followed the Holy Emperor closely. We have already made it this far. Next, it's up to Lu Dingxing. You don't need to be nervous. Zhang Zizai also has time. You can face his divine tribulation with peace of mind. If they pass this level, no one can stop them from soaring in the future, the Holy Emperor said. Shen Xiao nodded. In fact, she was indeed in despair, but she got endless hope. Now she was excited. In addition to being excited, she suddenly felt a little disappointed. She thought of Juxian, Lingling, and then thought of how hard he worked for Lingxian today, and how infatuated Su Yuexi was. It seemed that he himself had not much room for Yan'er. More or less, there was always some disappointment. It was impossible not to care, but it was too familiar, and it was hard to say. Her personality was very similar to Su Yuexi, but she could no longer be as free and easy as she was. Let's pray first that he and Yan'er can be safe this time, and that bitch must die. The Lord of the Eternal Night Star was searching frantically, and this matter was not over yet. In a distant canyon, there are green trees everywhere. Among them is a moon-eating wolf, which is crawling here with a slightly nervous look. At this moment, 4 figures suddenly appeared here. Zhang Zizai, Lingxian, Lu Dingxing, and Ji Yingying all appeared here instantly. The moment he appeared, Lu Dingxing took out the god-level totem magic weapon he had prepared from the space jade pendant, the god-locking chain, and tied Ji Yingying up. Although she has a good figure and is even more blood-spurting when tied up, she is not so good-looking when she is covered in blood and has a hideous face. Zhang Zizai, if you dare to touch me, you will definitely die without a burial place. You don't even know who I am. This is the first time she called out Zhang Zizai's full name. She used to call him Brother Zhang in a pretentious way. However, just when she finished, Lu Dingxing punched her head directly, and after a shock, Ji Yingying fainted. This is the soul calming fist, which can make her shut up, Zhang Zizai said. Okay, you do it. Zhang Zizai already felt something was wrong. He knew that the divine calamity was likely to come soon, and he had to overcome it, so he couldn't watch Lu Dingxing try to help Lingxian regain her bloodline. After all, it was his first time using it, so it would definitely not be so smooth, and there was even a risk of failure. After all, it was a gamble. But Zhang Zizai was willing to believe him. Lu Dingxing was definitely a gentleman who didn't understand romance. He picked up such a beautiful woman like a wild boar he had hunted before, tied her directly to a tree, and never looked at her from beginning to end, and then said to Lingxian, "You sit here." Okay, Lingxian sat cross-legged next to Ji Yingying, and Lu Dingxing stood between them. He seized the time and started to practice. In Lingxuan's eyes, Zhang Zizai was getting farther and farther away, and he couldn't let his divine calamity disturb Lu Dingxing. Probably the position where the disciples were unlikely to be affected. He looked over there, Lu Dingxing's hands were placed on the heads of the two people, and it seemed that it had already begun. A black demonic aura entangled the three of them. Because the Lord of the Eternal Night might catch up, they still needed to race against time. Looking at this hopeful scene, Zhang Zizai finally smiled. This was the meaning of his fight. He knew that the next step would also be a test for Ling Xian. You must keep hope, me too. He had seen Suyuexi's tribulation, which was not a simple matter. At this moment, the sky was already covered with dark clouds. The next moment, Zhang Zizai frowned. Because he saw that the area of the dark clouds was 10 times more than when Suyuexi was tribulation.